Deep beneath the hills of northern Spain lies one of the most haunting archaeological discoveries ever unearthed. A chamber filled with ancient human bones, hidden away for nearly 500,000 years. It's known as Sima de los Huesos, or the Pit of Bones. Inside this cave, scientists have uncovered the remains of at least 28 ancient humans, men, women, and children, all belonging to a species that lived long before modern humans. Their fossils were found jumbled together in a single pit, at the bottom of a deep vertical shaft. The question that has fascinated and unsettled archaeologists ever since is, how did they get there? Were these early humans the victims of an ancient catastrophe? Were they murdered and dumped into the pit? Or were they deliberately placed there by their own kind? Evidence of the earliest known burial site in human history? This is the story of the Atapuerca death pit, and what it reveals about the dark, mysterious beginnings of human consciousness. The discovery. The hills of Atapuerca, near the city of Burgos in northern Spain, have long been a treasure trove of prehistoric secrets. In the late 1970s, a group of cavers exploring an old railway cutting stumbled upon a network of deep limestone chambers, a labyrinth carved by water over millions of years. One of these chambers led to a shaft that dropped 13 meters down into darkness. At the bottom, the explorers found what looked like fragments of ancient bones. When professional archaeologists arrived, led by Juan Luis Arzuaga and his team from the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, they began what would become one of the most important paleoanthropological excavations in Europe. Over the years, more than 7,000 fossil fragments were carefully recovered from the pit. When assembled, they represented the remains of at least 28 individuals, young and old, male and female. It was an unprecedented find. Never before had so many ancient human fossils been discovered in a single location from such a deep period of time. Radiometric dating placed them at roughly 430,000 years old. These were not Homo sapiens, not even Neanderthals, but an older species known as Homo Heidelbergensis, widely considered the direct ancestor of the Neanderthals. The discovery painted an extraordinary picture of Europe's deep prehistory. These were some of the earliest humans to inhabit the continent, living in small, organized groups, using stone tools and possibly even communicating through primitive language. But the pit itself, and how the bodies ended up there, became the real mystery. Who were the people of the pit? To understand the mystery, we first have to understand the people. Homo heidelbergensis was an early human species that lived between 600,000 and 200,000 years ago across Africa and Europe. They were intelligent hunters, tool makers, and social beings. A crucial bridge between the earlier Homo erectus and the later Homo neanderthalensis. Fossil analysis suggests that these individuals were robust and strong, with large brains approaching the size of ours. They used wooden spears for hunting large animals and likely lived in cooperative groups. Their societies may have been small, but they show the first signs of long-term planning and care for the injured, hints of the emotional and cognitive depth that would later define humanity. And yet the pit challenges our understanding of how far those qualities extended. Because here, nearly 30 individuals were found in a single vertical shaft, an ancient grave without clear explanation. The theories: how did they end up there? Archaeologists and paleoanthropologists have proposed several theories to explain the macabre scene inside Sima de los Huesos. Each one tells a different story of accident, violence, or perhaps the first spark of spiritual awareness in human history. Theory 1: accidental death. The simplest explanation is that the individuals simply fell in. The vertical shaft is deep and narrow, and it's possible that over generations, members of this ancient community accidentally stumbled into it, unable to climb out. Some may have been exploring, others seeking shelter, or perhaps hunting animals that wandered into the cave system. But this theory raises problems. The fossils were not scattered randomly across the site. They were concentrated in one specific chamber, and the bones showed no signs of catastrophic trauma from a fall. Moreover, finding 28 individuals in the same pit over time stretches coincidence. Something more deliberate seems to have taken place. Theory 2. Violence or murder. Another theory paints a darker picture. Perhaps this was a site of violence, an ancient massacre or execution ground. Among the thousands of bone fragments, one skull known as Cranium 17 showed 2 deep symmetrical fractures above the left eye socket, wounds inflicted by a blunt object. These injuries were made while the individual was still alive, suggesting intentional violence, possibly murder. If true, this could represent the earliest known evidence of interpersonal killing in human history. Was this pit used to dispose of victims, an ancient dumping ground for the dead? Or could this individual have been a rare case within a broader, peaceful burial practice? The evidence, again, complicates the picture. Only one individual shows signs of trauma consistent with deliberate killing. The rest show no such injuries. That brings us to the most haunting and fascinating possibility of all. Theory 3. The first burial site. Many archaeologists now believe the death pit represents something profoundly human. The earliest known intentional deposition of the dead. Unlike an accident or a massacre, the arrangement of bones and the number of individuals suggest that bodies were deliberately placed in the pit over time. The shaft may have acted as a natural burial site, a place chosen intentionally by this prehistoric community to lay their dead to rest. If that's true, then Sima de los Huesos marks the first evidence of ritualized behavior. The first time our ancestors treated death not as an inconvenience or a danger, but as something sacred. Something that required action and reverence. The discovery of a single hand axe made from red quartzite and found among the bones strengthens this interpretation. This tool, nicknamed Excalibur, was carefully shaped and placed with the bodies. It shows no signs of practical use. It wasn't a hunting weapon or a cutting tool. Many researchers believe it was an offering, the earliest example of symbolic thought in human history. That single stone may represent the first glimmer of what would one day become religion, art, and ritual, the moment humans began to understand the meaning of death. Early signs of awareness. If the Sima de los Huesos site truly represents a deliberate act of burial, then it rewrites our understanding of early human behavior. Until recently, most researchers believed that only modern humans, Homo sapiens, practiced burial rituals. Neanderthals, who appeared much later, have also shown evidence of deliberate burials. But this pit predates both by hundreds of thousands of years. It suggests that awareness of death, and perhaps even the concept of an afterlife, may have emerged long before our own species appeared. Think about that for a moment. Nearly 500,000 years ago, in a cold, dark cave in prehistoric Spain, a small group of humans may have carried their dead companions to the edge of a deep shaft and released them into the earth, not as trash, but as a farewell. It's a haunting thought. The people of Atapuerca may have been the first to look at death and understand it. What it means for our understanding of humanity. The Atapuerca death pit forces us to rethink when humanity truly began. Not biologically, but spiritually. It's one thing to make tools, hunt animals, or build shelter. It's another to grasp the concept of mortality. To feel empathy for the dead and perform symbolic acts to honor them. If Homo Heidelbergensis were capable of this, then the roots of compassion, empathy, and ritual stretch far deeper than anyone imagined. The Atapuerca people may not have had language as we know it. They may not have painted caves or carved statues. But through their actions, they left behind something equally powerful, a message across time that says, we understood loss, violence, mortality, and early human emotion. And yet, there's another possibility, one that's harder to face. What if the pit represents not empathy, but violence? What if these were not burials, but victims? Casualties of an early conflict between groups of Homo Heidelbergensis. Some researchers point to evidence of cannibalism in nearby caves, suggesting that competition for resources may have driven ancient humans to brutal extremes. It's possible, they argue, that the Sima de los Huesos individuals were not laid to rest by loved ones but disposed of by enemies. If true, it would mean that awareness of death and violence evolved hand in hand, that our ancestors were capable of both compassion and cruelty long before our species arrived. Whether through reverence or conflict, the pit remains a window into the earliest stirrings of complex emotion. The ability to love, hate, grieve, and fear. A glimpse into deep time. Every fossil recovered from the pit tells a story that bridges nearly 500,000 years of history. The DNA extracted from these bones has provided some of the oldest known genetic material from ancient humans, confirming their close relationship to Neanderthals. Through their bones, we can trace the path of evolution, how these early Europeans gradually developed the physical and cognitive traits that would define later species. But beyond biology, what truly resonates is the emotional dimension. These were not abstract ancestors, they were people. Individuals with families, communities, and fears. They lived, hunted, laughed, and mourned in a world we can barely imagine. When we look into the pit, we're not just seeing bones. We're glimpsing the dawn of consciousness. The act of placing their dead into the earth may have been the first spark of what we call humanity. It's a haunting legacy, echoing across hundreds of thousands of years. The realization that to be human is to live with the knowledge of death and to find meaning in it.